Good morning and welcome to Bordeaux Unpicked, where episode 7, week 7 of the Bordeaux 23 campaign. And this is the podcast, as you know, that we've been doing on a weekly basis to discuss the releases. I'm Joe Muller, and I'm joined today actually because our friendly northern colleague is on his travels. He's in Greece. I can imagine he's probably quite lobster pink about now. And eating a lot of sardines and octopus. But I'm joined with the head of our fine wine buying, Guy Seddon.
Hello, Joe. Pleased to be with you. I thought you'd never ask.
Well, you are part of the A team, and there's a bit of there's a rivalry between our Beta Echo team, that Ditch and Aaron and I make up. So no, it's a genuine joy to have you on and have your expertise.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Cool. So let's go into. This is today, we'll probably very obscurely start backwards. Today seems to be the last sort of act, if you like, on the Bordeaux, on the Place de Bordeaux releases, which we'll come on to. So this will be the last week of us sort of picking apart the releases as they've come out. We do, as a company, have two brilliant ones to follow in June and July, which is Château Troplong and Petrus. Troplong's exclusivity for us, as most of you know, and if you don't, this is where you need to come and buy it through Corny and Barry. And Petrus, we get the lion's share in the UK. I've got a great relationship with the estate and long-standing, and we'll be doing that sort of later in July. But for the time being, we are now towards the end of it, and the week sort of kicked off with Smith-Oak Lafitte and Lif. Any thoughts on those from you?
Yeah, well, Smith-Oak Lafitte is a wine that I always want to like, and I genuinely did like actually this year, but it's just a little bit hard to get on board with it when we see pricing like this. I mean, I know it's been in the news recently. I know it's been welcoming the new king and all of this good news coverage and things that the estate has had, and the wine we genuinely liked a lot this year, both the red and the white. But the price, I think, could have been better.
Yeah, totally. It's a bit of a fail, really, isn't it? Because all vintages on the pricing, that is, the quality was there. I agree with you. I really was quite enamoured with Smith-Oak Lafitte. And when you're tasting the wines in Bordeaux, I don't know if this goes through your head. When you're tasting outside of the big Pessac properties of Haut-Brion, La Mission, Haut-Brion, sometimes you go in there with low expectations, and Smith-Oak Lafitte was the one this year that really sort of shone. But coming out 594, 6 for the red and 702 for the white, you can pretty much buy everything cheaper in the market.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's to do with the label or, but it hasn't sold particularly well, and understandably.
Agreed. So I think moving swiftly on.
So then we saw Lif come out, which is part of the Tiempon stable of releases, and it's originally it's a Saint-Emilion, and it's gone certainly from strength to strength in terms of quality. It was originally labelled Haut Planté, and I remember our first vintage of Haut Planté, I think it was 2010.
Yeah.
It was a real good value little sort of case of wine, and obviously as the investment and the work has gone in, and the winemaking has sort of is starting to understand the terroir of Haut Planté more and more, and the guys get to grips, the wine inevitably has increased in quality and price, and that came out at 300 a 3, 600 a 6. So it was an interesting one. I mean, most recent back vintages were slightly more expensive. It's not one that I tasted. I don't know if we did as a company. Did you try it?
Yeah, I did. We did taste at the Pound this year, which was great, and it's a real privilege to taste there, especially as that hasn't always been the case. And I like the wine a lot. I think it is showing a lot of Merlot characters. 80% Merlot this year. Made since 2011 by recollection, actually. So I think that might have been the first vintage. It was called Lif. The wine was great, and there's a certain aura that surrounds these wines, I think. Due to the tiny quantities and the very high quality. So yes, we were impressed with the wine.
Cool. Well, there you go. There's a great example for the listeners of the A team versus the Echo team at Le Pan tasting. I wasn't quite privy to that one on this occasion. So on to the Tuesday, there is a contender for possibly the biggest flop of the campaign, Troplong Mondot. So Troplong came out at £534 for a case of 6, and again you can buy everything for less, apart from 22 is the only one really which has sort of come down. So Troplong, difficult one to swallow.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Emeric de Gironde, who's the at the helm of the estate, has done really good things. And I mean, the wine has really almost done a complete volte-face from the days when it was quite sort of Parkerized and quite big and extracted to something much more elegant and much more impressive. However, even taking into account this kind of repositioning of the estate, it's hard to see the sense in this price. And I think it was more of a statement of intent than an actual sort of commercial attempt to sell through the wine.
Yeah, no, indeed. I think the repositioning, on one hand, I respect, of course I do. I think there's been a lot of good examples through Bordeaux recent history of where there's either been new owners, reinvestment, new changes and appointments in terms of winemakers, or and these do result in better wines, and sometimes they do take time to find their natural place in the market. But this feels a little bit too forced too soon, particularly when the market, generally the sensitivities around the market. Anyway, unfortunately, I think that day as well, Hope Bay, which we won't talk too much on, sort of followed suit in the same pattern, and again, it didn't sell particularly well. These are wines that really only diehard fans who buy every year are considering, and even in that case, personally, I didn't sell a single case, but it wasn't one I was particularly keen on pushing anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Haute Bay as well. I think we can agree that it's a universally admired estate, and it's got a very strong following, and historically in the UK it has been a very popular wine. I think. Is there a point in buying it when it's 25% down versus the 2022 price, but you can still buy a number of recent back vintages cheaper in the market. And I think if you're thinking in terms of, I mean, I listened to this podcast when you guys have been doing it over previous weeks, and I think sort of from an outsider's perspective, people might sort of think, well, they're getting quite hung up on the dollars and cents in terms of these release prices. But when you factor in the cost of storing these wines, and especially a wine like this is not going to be drinking for many, many years to come. So, it's a genuine consideration. And I think if you do want to drink this wine, as I'm sure many of our customers will in years to come, why not just buy it a bit later? And I think this is the challenge that Bordeaux is faced with these days, that, they have this great selling opportunity to get people enthused about the wines in this sort of en primeur window. But, if people are going to be paying a decade or more of carry in terms of storing the wines, then it just doesn't really make sense. And unfortunately, I think this is an example of that.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think that's very true. I mean, we do, when we put our own sort of thoughts, and we have a daily commentary on our website with the hub, and when we send our email offers out, we include the thoughts of them, and we try to sort of amalgamate everything: the quality of the wine, the price of it, the state of the market. And there are some wines where the price doesn't necessarily hit the desired level that you would love to see it at, but the quality that sort of backs behind it still can make it a very good buy in this vintage. And there's been some very good wines, but unfortunately, I think on both those ones, even the quality factor wasn't there to sort of push it over the line even more. Then yesterday we saw there was sort of two main releases yesterday, and we sort of getting towards the end of the main wines released through the Place de Bordeaux, and the Place is where the open market wines are circulated from the estates by courtiers to the negociants to the merchants in the various markets. And obviously we're getting towards the end of that, and Montrose, which is one we've been looking forward to because we loved the wine. Aaron and I have spoken about it before, a bit like the way we spoke about Pichon Lalonde as another left bank, which we were very excited about seeing what it came out at. And then the price, it came out at £724 a 6, and that was nicely in our recommended buy price, which we have for pre-orders, which was lovely to see. I don't know if Aaron's come across that news yet, and if he spat his ouzo out when he saw the price, but I mean, ultimately, it's a wine which is sold well in Bordeaux and sold well through us, we scored it highly. What you're looking at really is the only vintages that you can sort of pick up for less to sort of be comparatively on Montrose is 21, 17, and then the older vintages are 14 to 11. So it sits in that fair sort of level of assessment in terms of overall quality. Now, but in 23, the wine is excellent, and we wrote about this. It's also a potential 100-point wine for quite a prominent wine critic, and we can kind of understand the reason why. And this year Montrose decided that from 2023 they're actually making the wine from 45 hectares out of their 95 hectare property, predominantly from the Terrasse 4 sort of plate, if you like, of vineyard, which stretches across that left bank, and it goes down into this. That particular piece of land also stretches across to Latour, it stretches across to Margaux and Lascasse, and it's very revered for growing Cabernet at a brilliant rate. It's sort of slow ripening, and all the prized Cabernets and those properties come from that sort of section of terroir, which is ultimately geological plates that have been condensed down over time from the riverbeds. Now, they've taken that decision to make Montrose purely from that. I think it's paid off. It's got to be one of the reasons there. It means we're going to see less Montrose made than normal moving forward as well. And perhaps that accounts for it. But given this new direction, the scores it's received, we recommended it, and the price worked with it, and it seems to have sold.
I agree. I mean, I think it was a very, very classy wine, and we scored it highly. We were very enthusiastic about it, and I think rightly so. I mean, it's the most Saint-Estèphe, I think, of the top Saint-Estèphes, arguably, and I think it shows that real sort of mineral, textural, really sort of muscular bedrock that you get from those heavy soils up in Saint-Estèphe. And I thought it was a very, very impressive wine. The price is good. I mean, it's not a no-brainer, but I think it's a very fair price. The only sort of thing to note is that obviously this is going to be an incredibly long-lived wine. So when are you going to open your first bottle of Montrose 23? I mean, it's probably not going to be for some time to come. So you do have to factor that into the equation, I think, in terms of storage.
Indeed.
And stuff.
And then later that afternoon, we also saw Beau-Séjour come out. I think you tasted that, didn't you? And
yes,
that's one to talk about a new regime as well, I think.
Yeah, so Beau-Séjour, I mean, in a sense, I'm about to contradict sort of what we've been saying before about prices and how they have to work in the context of the current market and things. And I mean, I think Beau-Séjour is a bit of an exception. We tasted the wine and we loved it, first thing to say. So I think what Josephine is doing there is fantastic. She has relatively recently taken over and really has turned around an estate which was a little bit under the radar, Beau-Séjour Dufault-Lagarosse, which is her surname, and sort of rechristened it just Beau-Séjour, which arguably is a little more friendly in the age of social media and all of that stuff. So the wine itself, it's a very sort of almost Burgundian approach to picking and to vinification. It's a sort of plot by plot, parcel type approach. They've invested an awful lot of money and time and effort into understanding all of the sort of component parts that go into making Beau-Séjour. And Josephine sort of quite cleverly, I think, sent a letter to her sort of key relationships in the UK and presumably elsewhere, sort of explaining in advance of coming out with yesterday's release, Wednesday's release, exactly what her thinking was. And I mean, she, just to pick up on one thing that she said, I mean, she's fully aware of this year's difficult context for the Bordeaux wine market. We have nonetheless decided not to let it stop us from bringing this wine to new heights, but to continue elevating it every year. For this reason, we must maintain a price policy that is in line with our ambitions and with the efforts that we are contributing. Now, I'm going to just read that out as sort of example of somebody who clearly knew that they were going to be releasing the wine at a high price and was aware that that might attract criticism from some parts. I'm inclined to sort of come down on the side of understanding her perspective on this one. And even though we haven't perhaps sold as much as we would have done if the price had been a notch lower, for a very small estate like this, and for somebody who clearly does have very high ambitions and for the right reasons, I would say, I'm inclined to be a little bit more understanding.
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair comments. But I'm envious actually that you've tasted there. I haven't tasted there yet. I look forward to a visit at some point soon, no doubt, and meeting Josephine. But to see the work they're doing, and particularly to see the quality and what's resulting in the final wine. So, ultimately, I'm all for people trying to push the quality of particularly some of these estates which have got deep-rooted histories, and they've gone through a bit of a patch where maybe focus is slightly lost, or commercial decisions, or it could be a myriad of reasons. But this is one that really is trying to move forward and sort of strive towards greatness, and it's on a wonderful piece of terroir. So yeah, it's a good idea.
But I think if customers were to ask me my advice, I would say this is definitely a name to watch, and it's one to follow in the future.
Yeah.
Is there a sort of imperative to buy it now? No, I don't think there is, and I think that's not at odds with our kind of love and support for the wine.
Yeah.
So I think it's a name to keep on your radar, but don't necessarily rush in and buy it right now.
Yeah, indeed, on the up.
Yeah.
In my excitement of sort of rattling through the week, we missed what probably is one of my possibly the best release of the week, which was VCC.
Yeah.
So that came out on Tuesday afternoon, late afternoon. £1,110 for 6 bottles. The wine was gorgeous. It was one of those ethereal style Pomerols. We've spoken about in the vintage reports pod, which I've done with Guy, and when we did our post visit report on here, and tannin and structure is such a crucial element of the 23s, and the tannins in VCC were gorgeous. They were so beautifully textural and refined, and alongside this sort of lighter style. And I remember you commenting that Thierry Van Eyck sort of said, this is going back to classic Bordeaux because it's that lighter.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I absolutely love VCC, and I'll go as far as to say that I actually preferred it to Le Pan when we tasted it. So I think it's a stunning wine, and we all got quite excited on the sales floor when we saw the price that it had come out at, because I think that's a real gesture of sort of trying to get on board with En Primeur and making the right moves in terms of the market. So we will definitely recommend that, or continue to recommend that to our customers. We bought as much as we could get hold of, and it's sold well.
Yeah, we've actually sold out as of now. So we did. So at the moment, the way things stand, we're struggling to get hold of more. That's understandable. Like you said, going to talk about the price, because part of this is a commercial dissection as well as a podcast, and it's the only vintage you can buy of Vieux Château Certain for less. Again, is the 17 and 14, 13, 11 type scenario, and this is a wine which is far superior. So it was really a winner, and it was lovely to see, and it really gave a real burst of energy into the week, which had started with a bit of a shudder with Smith Oliphant, as we spoke about earlier.
It's been a week of two halves, I think. It's been a sort of slightly disappointing beginning, followed by rather exciting finish.
Yeah, well, exactly. So on that note, let's move on to today. And your thoughts for today? We've obviously had two of the big names, Conseillante in Pomerol and Figeac in Saint-Emilion.
Yeah, well, two great releases. I mean, these are two wines that I almost unfailingly love. And last year was just sort of disappointing in terms of price. So, they both came out at very high prices for their 22s. This year, they've both miraculously come back down again. So, that's good to see. And I think both of them have very savvy teams at the helm. Both of them are very attuned to what's going on in the market. I think there is an element of wanting to pull away from the crowd, and that possibly was some behind last year's repositioning price-wise for both of them. But I think both have listened to the market, and I scored both wines very highly. Both tastings were very exciting tastings. I would wholeheartedly recommend both of them. I don't know if you want to go into more detail on the prices themselves.
Yeah, well, with Conseillante, that they both matched each other, which is funny. Yeah, they're both, which is the first time I've seen that. I can't recall any other time when they were both identical. £894 for 6 bottle case, and they with Conseillante, that fell just in the middle of our pre-order recommended buy bracket. And with Figeac, actually, that was below, which was lovely to see. So these were nice, just sort of reference points for us to start the day on. And it was an early release. The sales guys were in, and to sort of see that come through just meant brilliant. We're going to have a bit of an energetic day here. We're going to sell some wine, which is brilliant wine overall. We scored Figeac 17.5 plus, Conseillante 18, so we slightly preferred Conseillante. So, we would have to say, given they're the same price, we would probably steer towards Conseillante if we had to pick one. But, these are two different expressions of two brilliant regions of the right bank.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the sort of relative character, I mean, Conseillante for me is always about the sort of lush red fruit and that lovely sort of violet-hued kind of perfume and aromatics. Figeac, with a relatively high proportion of Cabernet Sauvignon, which is quite unusual on the right bank. This year, 27% Cab Sav, and that really comes through in this sort of cassis, slightly minty type of character, which is unusual in Saint-Emilion, and I think is fantastic. So no, all very good.
Yeah, I think from a market point of view, there's maybe a little bit more interest with Conseillante, and again, like Montrose, with Montrose and Conseillante also has received a potential 100-point score from a very an expert of Bordeaux who writes for very predominant critics. So that's where you can understand that coming through. But two nice releases. Get in touch today and tomorrow if there is anything of interest there. And that sort of brings us to the close of the week. Like I mentioned earlier on at the beginning of the podcast, for us it's not fully over, certainly not. We've got two big Bordeaux releases, but we'll also come back next week, and I think Aaron will be back from his travels, sporting a winning tan, I'm sure, and we'll sort of go through a bit of a roundup and sort of pick apart the overall wins, any sort of patterns, the colossal potential fails in inverted commas, and do a bit of a roundup to sort of summarise.
Yeah, well, thanks to Aaron for lending me his seat in the studio, and we look forward to him being back here next week.
Cool. Good afternoon, and thanks for listening.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers, guy.